So is this where we dance when music's coming in?
Yep. Welcome to the Outlap podcast. Mike, welcome back from the Mexico City Gran Prix a couple weeks ago, and Trav, happy to have you back as well. And got the whole band together. Happy to be recording another episode. How are we doing, gents?
Yeah, man, doing well. Honestly, yeah, it's always good to chat with you guys and shoot the shit and talk about all things motorsports. It's been an interesting past few weeks, and yeah, man, coming back from Mexico City, it was an awesome race in person.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Nothing to add to that. So, Mike, let's just dive right into it. I want to hear a little bit about your fan experience in Mexico City, and feel free to listen. I'm sure not a lot of people want to hear ins and outs of your trip to Mexico City to watch F1. We do. Don't spare no detail. I want to hear a little bit about the travel, the fan experience, where you sat, what you saw, everything you can think of.
Yeah, man. No, it's honestly, it's a great race. So October in Mexico, altitude's like 6,000 feet, right? So about 1,000 feet above Denver, Colorado. And so with that, like, you get like a pretty interesting track conditions. It's pretty dry, so you don't really have to worry about the rain. It's like that time of year where it's not like violently hot. Honestly, we didn't really, like, at night you're wearing a jacket, and the day you're wearing short sleeves. But yeah, man, it was great. Like, I think if you look at where the track is, right? Because the track is a bit of a dedicated circuit, and then a little bit of a street circuit, and then it kind of weaves through some different areas. We were sat in the Foro Sol area, which is technically the baseball stadium during the off season of F1. And yeah, man, it was sick. It was awesome. I think if I don't know if someone wants to pull up the track map, but like one of the things is like if you go and Nick, maybe you have experience with this at Silverstone, but like when you go to Foro Sol, you're in just the gray zone, and the idea of walking around the track does not exist. You cannot get into anywhere else on the track except your little gray zone. So that's like the one thing that I would say, like, while Foro Sol is awesome, like it's probably the best place to watch the race, right? It's the stadium section. You got the, long, like, incoming, zoom in there and then go to the baseball stadium. Yeah, that's
is
so right here. No, it's actually right there. Yep. So there's another one.
Great
So it's
rating
that like
here.
long straight into a right-hander, which you don't see.
Yeah, so this is the straight here, and then the right-hander's here, and then you can see the little stadium
you go
chicane.
left, right, and then you're out again, and they're back, and then
Around
this is
the
pit
backside.
lane here, right?
For anyone who's wondering what the fuck is happening right now,
Oh, yeah,
we're
we're
looking at Google Maps. This is excellent radio. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to
Yeah,
remember some
yeah.
people listen audio only, but
Mike, you said
this is a video.
you said that that's the best place to watch the race. Why is that?
Well, so I think it's been voted multiple times as like one of the better spots to watch Formula One, just because it's a stadium, dude. It's like watching.
There's no real other spot in Formula One that has a setup quite like this, to where it's surrounded, 3 full sides by, grandstands. A lot of stadiums have places on tracks have so much room for runoffs and stuff like that the fans don't necessarily get to be as close as they are here. And as many fans as there are in one place, I think it gives more of that soccer or American football feel of the roar of the stadium, which I can say from experience at Silverstone, because there's so many grandstands spread out, you get that on a very small degree. You don't get that same level of visceral roar.
Yeah, no, it was pretty sweet, and so let's just understand that the Mexico City Grand Prix is Sergio Perez's race, and everyone else is just involved. So just some crazy stats while we were there, right? So we were seeing Red Bulls everywhere. You're in the city, there's little pop-up shops everywhere that are Red Bull this, Red Bull that. Sergio's on, no joke, every single billboard. He's in the tunnels, he's on the trains, he's on the billboards, he's posted on the side of buildings, all kinds of stuff. And it's Sergio Perez, Heineken, Sergio Perez, Telcel, Sergio Perez, like whatever you could think of, like the man, he is Jesus there. Like honestly, it's like it was like Mecca, and we were all there to see the man finish in 18th place. And it's wild because everyone's a Red Bull fan and like people cheer for Max, but like as soon as Checo would enter that stadium section, they would go bananas every single time. Practice, qualifying, all of it. Lost their ever-loving mind. It was sick.
That's awesome.
So, Nick, if you pull that photo back up, one thing about like that area is you do get access to kind of like trackside, which is pretty sweet. So I have some photos here that I might be able to share. We have a shared album, classic. And what you ended up with is you ended up with these like, let's see if I can share this.
We'll cut this, don't worry.
You end up with the ability to like end up walking down to the like the trackside. Like you literally can be in the stands. You have dedicated seats. It's not like, you know, bleacher seating. Like you have a seat. You have no back. You know, that's a problem and you're old, whatever. But like generally you're in a seat, and then whenever you want, you can go down and go get your beers and your stuff and then stand like right next to the track if you want to get hit in the face with like tire rubber. That was pretty sick. I got down there so this is that area. I'll try to kill the video, but this is that area. You can just walk straight down in here. So for those listening at home, I'm just showing a video we captured in the stands.
It's surprising that there's not more people, but I guess the view isn't quite as good unless you're right on the front row because it's so flat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So the fan zone and whatnot is all pretty sweet. It's like really small because you are like kind of stuck within a certain area. But then there's this funny little, like that last turn as you head towards the start finish straight, you could stick your phone underneath this like banner because they kind of try to block you from standing in areas, and you can get some of these shots. I think one of the coolest things that we got though was during the race, we got the restart. And the restart, let me see if I can find this video. The restart as they came back through that area, it was awesome. Also, all my friends are now on the podcast. Congrats, guys. Let's see. I think this might be it. No, this was qualifying. Anyways.
No, that looks like the restart.
Yeah, Max was leading at the time, so it's like Max like rips through here.
No, that does look like them queuing up right at the end.
Yeah, so either way, like
so this is where your seats where you were on the inside, or I guess technically the outside of the track, but yeah, like that. I see what you're saying, and then the podium was kind of directly across from you guys, right?
Yeah, let me see if this was the podium. So one crazy thing, this. So podium's here, right? You got to see everyone celebrate. And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with the F1 movie coming
Apex
out.
Grand Prix, baby.
Funny enough, Mike, maybe we're both going to be featured in that movie because literally they filmed at Silverstone this year too. And I actually saw the garage and stuff. They have a whole garage that's built out that's kind of impressive looking too.
Yeah, so like it was like after qualifying, it was like, hey, sit in your seats if you'd like to be involved in the movie. Like Brad Pitt's coming, pretty much, and everyone was losing their mind. Everyone on this side actually ended up getting like Apex flags and like merch and all this stuff. And then they rolled the car up, and then Brad Pitt walked out. Everyone obviously lost their mind. He did like 3 takes of like getting out of the car, giving it a nice wave, and doing the things. And yeah, pretty funny stuff. Other That's crazy cool. Just like stats from being there. Fernando Alonso, 400th Grand Prix while he was there. He didn't finish, but
I was about to say, yeah. Unfortunately, it was a pretty quick DNF.
Yeah, but man, it was electric. Like I would say, if you can make it to a race, this is a great race. Like again, podium ceremony. Like the car is on an elevator, and it literally like rises up, and then all of a sudden, like steam goes off, champagne's going. It's awesome.
Did you get to hear the mariachi band live rendition of the F1 theme song?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, man. Honestly, Mexico City, I'd go back. I'd do it again. Few kind of like just weird things, I would say. So one, everyone knows the contactless payment thing. is a pain, honestly. And I get it. Like, you don't want to have everyone just like flush with cash, like walking around. But like contactless payments sucked. Like, you had to go charge it up, then you'd
Oh,
tap.
so that was how you had to pay. It was like you were at an arcade and had to load up credits to be
Yeah.
able to pay. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. They
Now,
didn't have anything like that at Silverstone. I think obviously there's varying levels of security around the world that they do. Silverstone was just, I think they would have taken my American $20 bill if they had to.
yeah, and like, yeah, they were no cash whatsoever. You had to use these. Now, race tickets somewhere around like $350, $400 for the ticket, and that was every single day. So every single day the track was open, that got you access to all the days. So you got to see like Formula 4 Championship in the Latam. You got to see like an
Did you
open...
watch any of the feeder series?
Yeah, so the Formula 4, like they had 8 cars running. Honestly, it was like...
Formula Ford isn't,
Yeah,
isn't
it was like
much.
8 cars running. There wasn't a whole lot going on. There was a V8 series, which was pretty sick. They all looked this. It was like very NASCAR-esque. They all like looked the same, but they had different badging. Like there was all kinds of like, you know, Renaults and Pugo and all kinds of stuff that was out there ripping around.
Might
that
be
was
V8
pretty sweet.
supercar style like they run in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it kind of felt like. Now, Trav, here's the crazy thing. You remember when we used to go to Bristol, and it was like there wasn't enough hearing protection in the world to save you at that location?
Oh yeah.
Wild enough. Not a problem
Yeah.
during F1.
That makes sense. It's Bristol in particular. Like it's a really tight space and there's a ton of echoing. Where like that area, as our listeners saw on Google Maps a few minutes ago, that area is pretty open air. So I could see how the sound would have plenty of room to escape.
Yeah, man.
One thing in particular, Mike, I wanted to hear about is talk to me about travel in and out of the venue before and after the race and stuff.
Yeah, so we always, so like obviously Mexico City, language barrier. Like I would say I speak enough traveler Spanish, and then we have another buddy who's like a bit more fluent than I am. So we were able to get along like in Mexico City generally like pretty easy. I wouldn't say they like cater to the tourist, but they definitely like they know you're a big piece of the puzzle. So what we did actually is we took the train. So the train was like one way. It ended up being like I think like 30 pesos a person. In dollars, that's like $1.25 or like $1.05 or something. Like it was super cheap. Getting there was no problem. We were right in the middle of the city, so we would pick up. We were stayed in like the Condesa Roma Norte area, and so we would pick a train. We'd like walk 15 minutes to a train stop, catch the train, rip on out there, get off at the Velodrome stop, and then walk over to the Zone Grey. The first day we took it too far and took it to like the Autodromo Hermanos like area, and you ended up having to like walk like way far around to get to the actual gray zone to get in. And the weird thing is because you're like sequestered to these zones, and this road that's like is I don't know 5 lanes across is outside the stadium. You had to walk. Like when we got off on the wrong stop, we had to walk all the way down, walk up a bridge, walk over the road, walk down, walk in the gate, get our ticket scanned, walk up a bridge, like over, back in, and then that's finally where we made it in. So, you know, get your bearings if you do end up going to the Mexico City Grand Prix, just because it's like you can get kind of turned around pretty easy. And like I got Ticketmaster tickets.
That was really nice about Silverstone is it was kind of like a festival ground. So like once you're in it, you can walk around the whole thing. There was only like certain VIP areas that you couldn't go in, but like everything was connected, which made that whole navigating aspect way, way, way more simple. That sounds like a bit harder of a experience.
Yeah. So that was it. I would say like there was no issue on the train. Now race day qualifying was again easy, like in and out. Leaving after the race on race day, and we stuck around for like they actually like so the year before they had like Martin Garrix or something put on a show afterwards. This time they had like a mariachi band and some like famous Mexican singers. I obviously didn't know who they were perform, and like everyone was having a ripper of a time. So we bounced and got out of there, and getting on the train. There is a women and children section of the train. So like the girls got on, no problem. Boom, they're on. Like they got seats, they got no pressure. The dudes, however, we were sardines. So, like we let like 2 trains go with it was like wall to wall people, and then finally like a guy behind us was like, "Hey, these doors open and we're pushing," and like literally they opened and we just like slammed our way on, and then you were just like as tight as you could be on a train. So it was like very coming off of like a train ride in Tokyo. Like I would say similar.
That's very, very
Except there's
different.
like no formal guard pushing the door shut. It was like somebody like grabbing someone's backpack and shoving it in. So honestly, travel not that bad. Some people were picking up Ubers, and Uber's totally fine to get to and from. I'd say the one thing though that was like kind of nice is like obviously the exchange rate was pretty good. Mexico City, I wouldn't say is like the cheapest, but it's not expensive if you're coming from a major city like Denver, right? But the in-stadium stuff was actually pretty affordable for what I think of when I think of like, NFL beers and food and stuff like that. You could get a couple beers and 2 beers would end up costing you like, I don't know, like 10, $15. So it's kind of like $7 a beer. It's like what you get at a bar. So that was pretty
reasonable.
sweet. Now,
It's not egregious.
outside those doors, a beer would cost you like $3 to $6 like bucks if you were like really balling out. So wasn't too bad in there. The only other thing that happened was on qualifying, there's like 2 pinch points getting off those bridges where like people end up getting squished. And honestly, I didn't even think about pickpockets. Didn't even think about them. And we're walking, and my wife has like a Lululemon crossbody, and it's kind of like on her side. And all of a sudden, I see like a hand on it. I'm like, what the heck's that? And then like I see our buddy that we're with, his hand goes over on the top of it. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is like my buddy and my wife like holding hands on top of a bag? Like, this is the weirdest thing. Like, maybe we need some tequila to settle this or something. But at that point, then Becca reaches back. So now there's 3 hands on this bag. And I'm like, oh no. And at that point I see a lady, and she's got her arm, like her bag, like a coat draped in, and that hand slides back and goes behind the coat. So I kind of like give her a shoulder, like get her away, because I see what she's doing. And at that moment, there's like another American couple where like the guy's like panicked looking, the girl's like crying, and he's like, yeah, they got my wallet and phone. And she's like, they took everything, Mom. They're like going crazy. And all of a sudden there was like this weird little crowd surge, which like no need to have a crowd surge. And then like we get on the other side of the pinch point, and a few other people start like patting their stuff down. They're like, oh shit, like gone. So pickpockets are a thing. I was like, we only saw it.
Nobody lost anything on your crew?
No one in our group. Like everyone either
That's
had
good.
stuff in like, dudes obviously in your front pockets, but like all the girls had like crossbodies on their front. But yeah, anybody who looked like a whitey, like a gringo outside of the track with stuff in their back pockets, it was pretty much gone. Like we saw like 3 or 4 couples all like stuff out their back pockets. So I don't know if we just like hit that perfect little like time and just happened to not get clipped or not, but it was sick to not get our shit stolen. So either way, man, Mexico City was a ripper. Lots of tequila. If you like micheladas, there's apparently a million ways to order a michelada. So it's not just what you think. Like a michelada is just like lime juice and beer and salt. You got to get it with clamato if you want it red. If you want it brown, it's a cubano. It's a whole thing. But highly advised Mexico City Grand Prix. Really enjoyed it. Really good race. But yeah, anything else, boys? Anything else about the food's phenomenal, by the way, in Mexico City. Everyone knows that. But yeah, food's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's
miss.
always been. Well, first of all, thank you. That was a great breakdown. Mexico City cuisine has always fascinated me. It's so cool and vibrant and different than like what we see stateside, and would love to get out there and try all the weird shit they do with fruit and stuff like that. It looks really fun.
Yeah, man. And the race itself.
Let's talk about. Yeah, I was gonna say let's talk about the race, and I mean, we have to start with Max, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, what we're getting at is the Max Lando battle that happened during the race. Max, multiple laps of, one lap in particular of completely egregious driving. Listen, this is coming from somebody who is typically anti-Max. So I'm happy to hear anything other than that was a shame and just bad driving. But yeah, it was really frustrating to see as somebody who's kind of pulling for Lando this year.
Yeah. I think his whole like honestly, that was like everything that I saw was like everything that he like when he was going against Hamilton, right? Hamilton, him or neck and neck. It was always like inside line, dive, push wide, like. And it was honestly like it's one of those things. It's like we talk about motorsports as kind of like what are the rules, what is the gray area, and like operating in there. And like I think he finally got caught out a little bit there. But
yeah, and obviously in Austin there was
after
the
that with George Russell and the driving standards.
yeah.
Yeah, basically George Russell said
19 other drivers were in agreement.
20 drivers agreed, and it's funny. It wasn't like in context. Like it really didn't seem that crazy because he is the head of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, like all that kind of stuff. But like it's very clear that Max has a different idea of what is fair in racing than everybody else does. And like I hear a lot of talk about the iRacing stuff and what he does online, iRacing and stuff like that. But dude, my thing with that is like. We've seen this from great drivers in history. We've seen aggressive moves, right? Like Michael Schumacher is the glowing example of somebody who wasn't afraid to put his car in places that were uncomfortable and that made somebody make a choice. The Alonso quote is always great, but this is just it seems over the line. It doesn't seem like it's beneficial. Like there's a difference in picking your moment and going for a spot than just like refusing to be passed by all means and just driving all over the track knowing that like if I just get in front of him regardless of the rules, he can't pass me. Right. And it's really frustrating to see somebody with Max's talent do that kind of driving because he's good enough to drive circles around Lando.
Well, I mean, and to drive that point home, like if you watch the way that he battled, Carlos Sainz earlier in the Mexico City Grand Prix, that's the way that he should be racing. If you have the faster car, you're eventually going to get by. You have to have the delta. And then I think that, like, if you look back at history, unfortunately, like Senna and Prost had their own tangles and were kind of dirty drivers to win championships. Michael Schumacher, same thing. But if you look at like Fernando,
Nico, dude. I'm first to put in
like
Lewis
I actually think Lewis is the opposite side of things. Like if you look at the way that Lewis races overall, even in those tight moments, sometimes he pushes it, like in that Max in his moment in 2021 in Silverstone, right? Like that was Lewis pushing it, but at the same time, he's not forcefully driving another guy off the track the way that he did, the way that Max did in turn 7. Like that was unbelievably egregious. The move into 4, okay, you're going for a gap that's not really there, you shove him off, that's him trying to take advantage of the same rules he took advantage of last week in Austin. But the shit that he did in turn 7 was him seeing red and being like, he's the angry online driver that I can't race with because exactly that, you can't pass them or they'll pit maneuver you in the wall. It's sad to see because the dude's very talented. Unfortunately, it's another tarnish on his own brand because like everyone already doesn't really like him and when he's willing to do shit like that. And that's the thing that Lewis never had. The dude won 7 championships and never was there this much backlash about the stuff that he was doing on track. Him and Nico, had an absolute brawl, but I think that was an even brawl. Like Nico was towing the line and he was towing the line. I don't think either of them egregiously stepped over it, and that is what Max has clearly no issue doing, is just egregiously stepping over the line of what should be fair racing, and what you would expect out of another top tier driver on a racetrack.
Yeah. So with that, in the other Red Bull, again, the Mexico City Checo Perez Grand Prix, man, what a terrible showing.
Yeah.
Just
pretty emblematic of the last year and a half with him. It's kind of a good culmination of everything that's been happening.
Yeah, like I think like when you look at going into 2025, who's got that seat? Does he have that seat?
It's not Sergio. We know that.
I think it was
without a doubt in our minds. Yeah, it's not Sergio.
What I saw was a guy who just couldn't get anything out of a car that like clearly he should have been able to extract a lot out of. And then to have an under driver, right? Liam Lawson with going toe to toe, and then they're finally touching, and then he's getting side pod damage. Then the insult to injury to all of this.
trying
Was
to get
the
the
pit?
fastest lap.
Oh my. Oh my.
That was
He had no
unbelievable.
chance.
Dude.
He had no
Not-
chance.
Not even like while you're there in the stadium, like everyone's like, oh, like, you know, we got a few folks out, like this, that, and the other. Then all of a sudden you're like, what the hell happened to Sergio? And he's like, oh, he's got softs. Like, oh, he's going for it. And then he misses by like a half second or like a full. It was something crazy. It was like, what? So everyone was like, you know, Checo every time he came through. Even like when he did his things, like whatever. Liam, I'm glad he got out of Mexico alive. Like people wanted
Was
his
he
throat.
getting booed?
Dude.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they wanted him dead. They wanted him
But
dead.
okay, so let's pause that. Same place that Lando and Max had the issue, and I think that is wholeheartedly on Sergio. At the beginning of that contact, Liam was unwilling to back down. I think that realistically, the second team driver should probably comply a little bit more with a top team driver, but not in this
Smelling
instance.
blood in the water, dude.
No, exactly. Like the circumstances are different. Like the writing's on the wall that Sergio's going out, and this is his chance to prove himself.
You
So
saw this in
then-
Brazil, the opposite side of it, when Lawson let Max through
Exactly.
like immediately. That was so fucking funny. I saw that and like thought of this moment and was like,
Yes.
oh baby, he's
But-
on that seat.
to kick off all that shit happening, it was such a desperate move from Sergio. Hucking down the inside in a space that was not open.
Yes.
That move was never going to stick. And then he's then sitting there pissed at Liam for closing the door. It's like, bro, that's on you. So
And how about the drive-by finger from Liam when
Oh,
he finally
that
gets
was
the
so
pass
good.
later? It's like,
Yeah.
God, dude, just
again, though, he does need to chill out a little bit with
Yeah.
that if he really does want to. And he definitely did in Brazil. But
That's
no,
what
but
Red
like
Bull wants, dude. Red Bull had a
No,
bunch of
no,
nice
no.
dudes. They want somebody coming in and flipping
Super
people off. They
gremlins.
do.
I think they like it, but I think they're also like he needs to toe that line because Max is not going to take nicely to getting the middle finger, right?
Yeah.
So that's the
Honest
other thing
question.
too.
How long do you guys think Max is going to be in F1? I'm dead serious.
I think he's
As long as
I
he's
think
winning.
Yeah, well, I actually think it'll really depend on the rule change and where Red Bull shakes out next year, right? If they come in and they have a tier 3 car, I think he's maybe got a season or two left in him. He might try to take a rule change car, make one progression, and if he's not there, he's out. I think, listen, the guy, from my take, loves to win, but he loves motorsports more than anything, and he sees F1 as a stop on his like timeline of motorsports, not being like an F1 lifer like a Lewis Hamilton. And like party on, whatever, do your thing, honestly. But yeah, I think it'll all depend if he's like Nick said, if he's winning. I don't think he's got a lot more appetite to be like he doesn't have like a Cleveland, like he can't be the Cleveland Browns. He can't
Yeah.
be like a Williams. He can't be he honestly can't be an Aston Martin or something like that mid tier that like has a chance
There's
to
an
win.
element of like he's not a good enough leader as well. Though he could go help those teams, he's so self-centered and cares so much about winning that he's unwilling to give his all unless he has a chance to win. And that's where it's like I think I've built up a lot more respect for guys like Lewis to be able to go through the absolute peaks that he has and then kind of been in the doldrums a little bit here with Mercedes, but like he's continued to try and progress his career, but also he has really tried to continue help that team and turn Mercedes around as well. I don't think Max is going to be near as honorable in that downfall of Red Bull, right?
I don't
That's
think
like
so
without
either.
a doubt.
I think that I do think that like kind of on the flip side of it, like to Mike's point, I do admire his drive to go outside of F1 and like I think Nick like with that dynamic in mind, I think he could go somewhere like Porsche Penske and do WEC or like one of those established like really really good racing teams in another series and do really well.
I think he'd go for
and
the
have
Triple
fun.
Crown. I think he's gonna Fernando Alonso it. I think he's
He
going
said
for the
he's
Triple
never,
Crown.
he said he has no interest in the Indy 500. So I hope
Really?
that changes. But yeah, he said he has no interest in oval racing because it's too dangerous.
Without a doubt, he's gonna do Le Mans. Like that's
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah,
he already
sure.
does
Yeah,
that stuff on iRacing. He does a lot of like 24-hour
Yeah.
endurance races.
And sorry for the tangent. I brought that up because I just wonder like if when Red Bull when they're planning for their next seat if they think about that and if they feel it because like
Well,
I don't
I
think
think with all the
people are-
drama that happened at Red Bull this year, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
they know that he's willing to walk. They know that his brand loyalty, it goes as far as him winning the drivers' championship. He could give a fuck about the constructors.
Yeah,
Like
so
that's
well,
where he's at.
Yeah, I think Red Bull keeping Sergio in the seat. Back to Sergio, right? Red Bull keeping Sergio in the seat as long as they did. They literally just gave away the constructors. Now,
100%.
all that being said, Liam driving well. Yuki, okay. Sainz going to Williams, right? Driving great. Honestly, what has he got? Like 4 wins. He's going nuts. At that Mexico City Grand Prix, the passes he made, the laps he did, like what he did, phenomenal drive for him to lose that seat. And he said it on the podium, I'm sure like you guys saw it and stuff, was just like, he's sad to see him taking Ferrari from like a number 3-4 team to potentially having a shot at a constructors and a drivers championship, and he just won't be in the car. Very like heartfelt, whatever. And I think I was going into this, Trav, on the podcast before where we missed you. I was saying like I'm kind of like a F1 groupie right now. It's like I used to like Red Bull, but when it was like Danny and then Max came and I hated Max. And I was like, all right, well, maybe I'm just going to follow Danny around, and Danny ended up Renault, then McLaren, like all this stuff. And I was like, okay, maybe that's. And then Lewis Hamilton bought into the Broncos. It's like easy. I'll be a Mercedes fan. And now with like Lewis gone at Mercedes, I can't be a George fan. I think prime example, him being a president of the drivers committee or whatever you said, the FIA, dude. He's a guy he wears knitted gloves. I've saw a picture and a scarf. Like we just don't vibe.
I'm with
right?
you, dog. I
Dude.
can't get on board. I was
Can't
talking
vibe
to
with
my
him,
buddy
dude.
Tanner about this tonight. I had some drinks with some friends. I also think he's our newest
He's too
subscriber.
posh.
Tanner,
Like,
if
he's
you're
too
listening,
posh.
Sup, dude. But
big shout out.
I'm with you. He said he'd never wear Ferrari red for Lewis. I think I would. I think I'd rock some Ferrari stuff for Lewis. That's my guy,
Maybe, man. The thing is, like, I don't know if he deserves the seat. We'll see. I hope he proves me wrong.
Ooh, that's spicy.
Yeah,
That's
I don't know if he
spicy.
deserves the seat.
Ooh.
But
I'll tell you what. He hasn't been driving. We talked about this too. He hasn't been driving like it. He has looked poor. I have no excuses as a Lewis fan. It's just the car's not good. George is getting way more out of it than he is, and maybe it's just senioritis. But man, it's not good.
No, it's not. And so here's I'd love to speak to the Oracle of Chattanooga related to your F1. You made a lot of speculations that have gone incredibly right. So here's what I think is going to happen. Right, we get Checo out. Options are Liam, Yuki, someone else going to that Red Bull seat, or guy on the come up. Also, we want to talk about just people losing their ever loving mind. Colapinto. Everyone loves Colapinto. He drives great. Everyone in South America, Mexico City, losing their mind. Like, honestly, people were going bananas for Colapinto. Just going absolutely crazy. I think Colapinto picks up Williams' seat. I think Sainz maybe goes to Red Bull. Whoa, crazy. And then Albon, I think, sticks around at Williams. Or we see Sainz continue to stay with Williams, whatever. We probably get him back in a major seat in a few years. And then, like, Yuki's going to get the testing. He's getting the testing laps in the Red Bull car. Does he get the driver's seat? I don't know. Would love the oracle of...
Okay, so I don't think that Yuki gets the Red Bull seat after his performance in Austin.
Agreed.
It's like the first time that Liam hops in the car, he catches him in the race, and then Yuki spins on his own. And it's like, dude, you've been in F1 for 4 years now. What are you doing?
Hit the banana, and the red shell got him.
Exactly. And then, he's pretty much been outperformed in every other race since. And so I just don't think that he has a chance at that seat. And it's like he hasn't been in contention for the seat for so long. The only reason is like they realize that they need to measure Liam against something, which is why he's quote unquote in contention for that seat. But why has he been just sitting in VCARB for 3 years now, doing okay, but has not even been in conversation to even be in that seat?
Well, we
I don't
kind of
see
talked
that.
about this earlier, right? Is like Yuki's attached to like as a title sponsor to Honda. Honda's
Yeah.
leaving, so like, do you see Yuki leave with the money? Right? Do they?
I think Lance Stroll's going to retire hopefully soon,
I
and then
agree.
yes, I think Yuki's going to
He's
end
got
up
a
over
promising
there.
tennis career to follow up on for sure.
Yes, yes, he
Yeah,
needs to get the hell
or a
out of the sport.
handful of yachts to chill out on. But
I think Colapinto does not get a seat to start the year. I think
Yeah.
Sainz is going to stay at Williams. I think Lawson's going to go to Red Bull. Mike, I totally think that I love Colapinto. I'm with you. I think that
dude, he's nasty.
he is nasty. But like if I'm picking right now, it's Liam Lawson. I am.
I think that would be
also
the safe
think,
bet.
like, I think the biggest token Colapinto has, other than his driving, which is excellent, is the South American market. Like that's really big. But I also wouldn't underestimate Australia, New Zealand. He's a Kiwi, and Kiwis haven't had a driver in F1 in a long time. So
Yeah.
I think they're fired up for somebody. And Lawson's nasty as well. Guy sticks his nose in it, and I feel like he fits the Red Bull vibe. And I could
he
see
does.
something like if Max is truly on the way out the door, and they feel that, and they're making decisions like. He would be a good teammate, I think. I think he, as we saw in Brazil, he let Max go.
So
But I
much
also
more
think he could
personable,
be the
though.
future of Red Bull if he got
So
hired.
much more personable. Like they're going to have a guy that can like a Danny Rick that could actually carry the brand and be a positive impact to the brand, and not necessarily like Max is just a positive for Red Bull because he wins, not because the things he says or does outside of the track.
So yeah, so with that, that's like Liam again being a little bit like abrasive with the Checo stuff. I think he does. If we lay out our betting odds, I think you're right, Trav. I think the wild card's the Sainz. I think the other thing is like Sainz always will see himself as a number one driver, right? And now I'm saying not Liam, like Liam's not going to see himself as that. Liam just knows that he's a rookie, like he's young. And I think that like they're looking for a Bottas to Hamilton as for Max. They're looking for someone that understands like, hey, I'm a driver too. Like I'm going to run laps in tires that you want to get data off of. I'm going to do all that. And Checo was supposed to play that role. Honestly, it would have been a perfect role for Checo. Like he had it.
It just fell off the
It just
cliff
fell off.
so hard.
I would like. I hope at some point we get a psychological recap because I honestly think it's between his ears rather than anything that he's actually doing. But let's wrap up. Mexico City. Sainz win, phenomenal. Drove away with it. Honestly,
Great drive, really
Great
fun
drive.
race, man. Mexico City, like as a whole, like
Pretty good drive by
Pretty good.
Lando after being bullied by Max
Yeah.
too.
yeah, yeah.
Mexico City has been pretty traditionally a shitty race. That was a really fun
Yeah.
race, Mike. That action that you got to see with Max and Lando coming into that corner, like dude, that had to be such a cool spot.
Yeah.
To see all that stuff going down late in the race. So
It was relatively slow, but you always, because of the way the spacing ended up working, you ended up always with a car in front of you pretty much. Like very rarely were you getting like any open track time.
That's
and then
cool,
the
man.
sweet part was the restart when they like you know how Max always cues people up really hard, and he literally caught him in that hairpin and just slams on it. And so it's just like it was like watching like the start finish straight, just like all of a sudden people just like whoa, and it was metal. It was awesome. It was sweet.
that's great, man.
Love that.
So we spend essentially 20 minutes bashing Max out of our 48 minutes or 38 minutes that we've done so far.
I know.
Then we roll into Brazil, where we see one of the best drives, maybe of all time in F1. Best drives in the past couple of years, but like genuinely legendary drive to come from 17th to win. Unbelievable stuff. Brazil is super fucking cool. Before we get into the race, I want to talk a little bit about Brazil. I was thinking a lot about this on the weekend. Obviously, we got some rain, but Brazil is such an interesting track in F1. I feel like there's not a lot of tracks that over time really fight through every single era and persist to be a great track. And Brazil has always
With
done
pretty
that.
much no changes too. That's what's really crazy
Yeah.
too. Like they've changed almost nothing.
It's almost nothing, and I think honestly, a lot of it has to do with the place on the calendar for the majority. Like it was the end race of the year for a long time in F1, so like it was always synonymous with like championship, right? So that brings a lot to the table, but it's just a great track, man. There's so much variety. That last sector is really really cool, and like it's just a neat sector that doesn't exist in F1 a lot, where you're still going super fast, but hitting the corners towards the end, 12, 13, 14, 15, like if you get off your line, you have to lift and you lose a lot of speed. It's just like it's a NASCAR style, really fast outside flooring it corners. That's really cool. So I love this track. First two corners are awesome. The Senna S is so sick. Watching people dive down the inside, and especially on wet tires, man. Like seeing them struggle
And
for
sprint
grip down
race,
there.
which we saw just phenomenal racing overall the whole weekend.
Oh,
Like it was
gosh.
just really, really good racing. The sprint race, went fantastic for McLaren, but throughout the field, the battling was really, really good. And then in the wet, that was poised to be a really good race for McLaren, and then it all fell apart. I wanted to start off while we were talking about bashing, not bashing Max, but going back to bashing Lance Stroll. Holy shit.
sick.
So on the formation lap, spins it facing the wrong way. Then does a 180 turn and just says, you know what? I'm going to send it right through the gravel trap. With wet tires at about 5 miles an hour, I totally don't think this is going to... And then
Dude.
there's an escape road. If he could have just
Yes.
drove around... either way, could have backed up farther, could have done anything other than what he did. That is just one of those things where it just tells me he does not want to drive. I think he
Dude.
consciously made that decision. He's like,
Yes.
man, it's pretty fucking wet. I'm a little scared.
Or
I
what's
wanna
the
use
cost?
car.
What's
Yeah.
the cost? Honestly, like he doesn't want to drive.
He's like,
So I will say, like the driver, going back to Mexico City, like when they do the driver, like jump in the car and they kind of drive around and wave and do all the things. Lance Stroll, Max Stroll. That'd be an interesting combo. Lance Stroll, hoodie up, glasses on. It's like he had been partying, like raging, and he was so hungover for like that Friday morning work call. Like the dude wanted nothing to do with being.
I'm
at
here
the
so I don't
racetrack.
get fined.
Dude, it was so wild. And then seeing that. Now, the other thing, I don't know if you guys saw the videos, when he spins on that formation lap, he does it right in front of like one of the major like grandstands, and they're cheering and kind of like giving him shit. And I don't know, like, did he panic? Or like, did he make a business decision? He's like, I'm probably going to put this car on the wall. I really don't want to be wet and cold because I'm rich. And let's just beach this thing and get out of here. Probably, dude. The guy's a bum. Get him out
Yeah.
of F1.
Yeah.
Get him someone else in there who wants to compete.
He's
Stop.
now
I'm
just
full stop.
he's so taken the throne from Logie Sarge, because it was Logie Sarge just wholeheartedly being the absolute doormat of
come
F1.
on. They're in
No,
different.
no.
Lance Stroll has shown
Okay.
different quality.
I actually think that it's arguably like it's much worse. It two things back to Logan Sargent that has just made him look so much worse, right? With Colapinto hopping in the car right
Shredding.
away and being able to score points and be close to Albon. But then you got a dude like Lance Stroll who actively doesn't give a shit and is still doing better than you. And
Yes.
and there was weekends this year that Williams had a better car than Aston Martin, and
Yeah.
he still couldn't. So it's just like
Yeah.
there is some credit. He's an okay race car driver. Like he's not as bad as Logan Sargent, but still get him the hell out.
Yeah. Well, we can put him to bed. Hopefully, if none of us want a job in F1, because I'm sure Papa Stroll is going to hear this one day in an interview when I'm trying to become a McLaren sponsor.
If he is so
and he's
delusional that he's unwilling to admit that his son is trash and doesn't give a shit, then he is not beholden to his own investors, right? Like at some point, it's getting closer and closer to that point where the driver change is going to come down from the board. They're going to be like, hey, if you want to take this serious, you got to put a serious driver's lineup together, and any driver's lineup, including Lance Stroll, is not a serious driver's lineup.
Yeah. So I was talking about being a groupie in F1. Trav, I'm getting more and more bullish on your opinion that Williams is a team to watch, right? You get a driver like Sainz in a car that's continually to improve, doing all the stuff. So boys, I think I'm a Williams fan. I think I'm gonna because also just being a flake that I am right now as a Williams fan, they're also attached to Mercedes. So like worst case scenario, I can kind of flip flop. But I think I'm a Williams guy. But man, that was sad for them. You want to talk about being a mechanic and that whole thing with both
In
cars,
Brazil. Yeah.
dude. Blowing them up.
Colapinto's pop on turn one was pretty nasty too, man. That looked when they panned over and saw the gas pouring out of the car and all four wheels off, I was nervous for a second. It didn't end up being as bad, but he took a pretty big like front to back side impact there. It's pretty nasty.
Because remind me, Albon had a shunt and they couldn't rebuild him.
So it was a sprint race. Yeah. So Albon had to sit out of the main race because he shunted in the sprint race.
Yeah.
That like or was it but essentially they had to rebuild 3 cars.
Yeah.
So they had issues in practice. They both made the sprint race, and then they had to rebuild Alex's car. He was unable to make the race, but then Colapinto destroyed his car. That's as bad as I've seen a car since Mick Schumacher at Saudi Arabia a couple years ago. Like, that is the closest to like a car's been ripped apart in a long time.
Yeah, no, it got shredded. I think with all the Williams woes, right? Just generally like cost and like all the things and like on the up and up to like just get absolutely shredded like that sucks.
The camera cut to the crew too. Oh, it was just like you knew it was gonna happen, but like you could see the pain on the pit wall. Like those guys in there, they just were like, "Oh my god, I haven't slept for 24 hours and then this happened again."
Yeah. Okay.
We do need to give Max his flowers though.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
All that to be said.
We do.
As much shit as I talk on the man, incredible.
Yeah.
I also not a huge fan the way that Lando handled it. I think Lando going into the race being like, I don't want to talk about the Drivers' Championship. And then you have like your competitor starting in dead last, you're in first, and then for him to beat you, like one, I think like seals the deal. Like Max, you deserve it. Like that drive, like having like I would say an inferior car towards the end of the season here to then do that, to put it like a cherry on top was crazy.
There was a stroke of luck, but even without that stroke of luck, he probably would have finished like second or third and maybe had a chance to win the race anyways. Like that was just what solidified it once it was him and Ocon and Gasly held out and just got so lucky, and George was so pissed when that call was made too.
Yep.
I was saying the same thing with it was getting worse and worse and worse. Like a red flag or a yellow flag was imminent, and I knew when they stopped together it was the wrong time, but Lando felt like it was the right time. That's what he said in the after race interview. But oh my God, George was pissed.
George was on the radio for 2 laps before that. They were like, "Yeah, let's box," and he's like, "No, it's gonna red flag. It's gonna red flag." And then finally, being the rule follower that George is, he got the box, sent it in, and then red flagged right after that. So, but
that drive from Max, like it was top class. Like it was a Hall of Fame drive.
The first couple laps were like breathtaking. Just he was. I love watching this when it happens. You've seen Lewis do this, but like the karting line, like the outside line, that like they know that they can kind of lean on those outside wheels and gather some steam where everybody else is trying to take the inside line and like struggling to rotate the car. Like just beautiful stuff, man. It was awesome, really fun. Like say what you want about Max. We spent the entire time talking about. I don't think he should have a driver's license, much less a super license, but. When the guy when he's on a mission and he wants to prove something, he's the best driver in the world.
Yeah, I fucking hate
him.
He's got that dog in him that Lando didn't. And that's the thing is like he made how many laps in a row? 0 mistakes, and Lando had multiple mistakes that were unforced errors, just blocking up, and it was like that shows that true championship class.
No, absolutely. And then with Ocon and Gasly taking a podium, pretty impressive, pretty cool.
$30 million bucks in prize winnings. They went from 9th to 6th. Insane.
Tell the listeners a little bit more about that, Nick. Like for those that maybe didn't catch like the Instagram or like the news that was popping off everywhere when that happened.
Yeah, so the way the constructors, why most teams care more about the constructor standings than the driver's standings is there is prize winnings allocated to the top team all the way down to the last place finishing team in a scaled order. So in the bottom set of teams, there's not a lot of points going around. So the fact that they were able to get a car to finish second and third. That is a huge point haul for a middle road team or lower middle of the road team. So they shot from ninth in the constructors standings all the way up to sixth, which is an additional $30 million in prize winnings at the end of the year. So that one race earned Alpine somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million in
That's
prize
so
winnings.
cool. And with them going away from like the actual Renault engines and stuff, like you got to imagine that spirits are pretty fucking low in that garage, and like to see that happen, like dude, the celebration after was awesome.
Yes.
That reminded me a lot of Kevin Magnussen getting on pole last year, like very similar. Like what the fuck are we doing here? But this is cool. Like.
Well, on that same note, I will say it was great to actually see some emotion out of Max Verstappen as well. Like him being so like jubilant and jumping in the pit arms, and Red Bull the same thing. Like they were so dominant last year that it became a handshake.
He lost the Drivers' Championship last week, essentially, right? Like I think Lando
has
has to win every race,
DNF.
and Max has to DNF.
Yeah, not every race, but it's like it's gonna take probably 2 DNFs from Max
and 2 wins from Lando. It's a lot. Yeah. He pretty much locked it up. I think that's where that was coming from.
No, 100%. Yeah. And again, for beginning of the season, dominant car, running away with it. Middle of the season, honestly, not competitive comparatively to then now, right? Like a driver winning a driver's championship is what he did, right? Like I think the car set up right, sure, maybe the pit window, getting a red flag necessary, awesome, but like you don't go from 18th to 1st without just like an unbelievable drive. So
and the thing was they weren't close to that fast in the dry, right? In the sprint race or the day before, they had the pace. Like McLaren had the pace, easy 1-2. But I think that Red Bull really put their money on we're going to set it up for the wet, and it just was that perfect unison of setup and driver being able to have confidence in the car, a lot more confidence than on the guys around him, and ultimately I think in the wet that is something that matters even more. Like you have to be confident that your car is gonna hold under you, because you saw so many guys that wrecked out from literally one tiny little ass move, and with the wet you just can't save it. Once you get too much slip angle, it's just unsavable. And again with Max too, just putting in fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap.
He won the race by
he didn't
18
let
or
up.
19 seconds.
And it was still wet. It was still not good conditions, and
wild.
He was still kind of just putting his meat on the table. Like, yeah. and then like I do the same thing if I'm in an F1 lobby and I'm way out in the lead. It's like, well, the only thing I can do is keep pumping in fastest laps and just demoralize the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
so we had a break. We had a break last weekend. This coming weekend, we're going to Vegas.
Let's fucking go!
Dude,
I am so stoked for this race after last year. And 2 words: cold
better
tires.
timing.
Cold tires.
Better timing.
Yeah, it's still 1 a.m.
No. They might have moved it up. It might still be 1 a.m. for you, but ultimately, like it was starting at like midnight and 1 a.m. last year local time. So that would have been like 2 and 3 a.m. for you, and it was even 1 a.m. for us. So it's starting, I think, at like 10 and 11. So they at least moved it up, and it's more reasonable. It's still going to be late, but I think that should be a little bit better on the drivers and everybody having to support that race as well. The timings that they did were pretty ridiculous last year.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and call it too. I put in a bet for Charles Leclerc to two-peat. I think I wanted to mention this too. I think Ferrari has a really good shot to win constructors. We've been at a couple tracks that don't really suit them very well. A lot of windy, not a ton of straights, not a ton of just a lot of fast corners, and that's not been their thing. They've been really good on the straights and really good on slow corners. We have a lot of those tracks coming up. They've also been good on purpose-built road courses, and both of those, to end the season, Qatar and Abu Dhabi are obviously good. So I think they have a really good shot, and I think Leclerc is going to do some work this weekend. I think this suits him really well, and it'll be cool to see some cold tires again, man. Nothing like F1 cars slipping around more than this shit.
Yeah. So I think as well, not to continue to sing your praises here, Trav, but like, honestly, Sainz, if you're thinking about you're putting in recruiting film, Like, you're going to end up in a Williams. We know it's an undercar. You're going to try not to stay there long. Like, right now is where you, like, if you're going to do it. Leclerc's been driving great. The car's great. Again, it's all suiting. So I would say I'd be pretty bullish on that. My McLaren fan here. What's going on with Piastri? How do we feel about him? Do you think he's fallen off? Is he
No.
staying competitive? Like, what do you think?
Not at all. I think there's like he's had a little bit of a couple off weekends, but at the end of the day, he hasn't been terrible. And like Lando's had his own weekends. I'm not concerned. I saw what I needed to see out of Piastri this year to be like, that's another like very solid driver. And like I've seen enough cracks in Lando's armor to have a little bit of doubt that like he is the possible like, you know, absolute future. Am I going to continue being a fan of Lando? Like, no doubt. I really like the guy and like him as a driver, but it's like when you see those errors being made on his side that have kind of crept in, it's really unfortunate. Like when I look at this season retroactively, like that middle stage, like middle stage of the year where McLaren were like, oh shit, we have a really fast car, but they didn't know how to operationally put it at the front. Like it was just one thing after another, mismanaging drivers, like not making the right runs necessarily in qualifying sometimes, but just having the fastest car and not being able to convert that into wins. Like ultimately ended up losing Lando, the drivers. Some of that's on them, but we could have very easily be, you know, having the constructors tied up if they had executed on a better level in that kind of middle stage of the season. Like there was so many times, like even the 1-2 with the Piastri win, it was like that was so frustrating operationally as a team, like how much of a shit show that was. And then, you know, other races where, again, they're qualifying really, really well, and they are not able to convert that into wins. I hope that's the biggest thing that they change going into next year. They make those operational changes. They know how to win. They know how to be at the front. So if they're able to deliver the car again, I hope Lando's going to be able to like put together more of a fight than he was this year, because I think he was fighting a little bit with one hand tied behind his back for the majority of this, just because of the kind of some of the limitations from the team side, not knowing how to manage things, and him not necessarily being in that position as well too. So all that said, drivers is probably done, but I'm hopeful for the drivers of next year that it's going to be really close. I also hope there's some clarity on the rules front to where Max will get banned from the sport or race banned or something if he decides to try and drive his championship rivals, whether it be Lando or someone else. Otherwise, like I don't want to see that type of driving like going forward. So those are the kind of two things that I'm hopeful for next year is like McLaren's going to be on their game a lot more. Ferrari's going to be thereabouts. Red Bull are going to be thereabouts. So we could be walking into like a fantastic last season of these regs.
Yep. On the constructors front, Haas has been continuing to kind of just make slight strides. I wish Gunter Steiner was still at the head, but I think whether it's process, personnel, or things, it's interesting to see them continue to climb. And so for everyone at home who's maybe not following along as closely, right now constructor standing is 593 points to McLaren, 557 points to Ferrari. Red Bull's got 544, Mercedes solidly in fourth at 382, Aston Martin 86, Alpine 49, Haas 46, RB 44, Williams 17, and then Kick Sauber and our boy Bottas with a 0 as Bottas signs off from F1.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really close. I don't think that Red Bull really has a chance, honestly, just with the way Sergio's been performing. It's a head-to-head fight between Red Bull and McLaren and Ferrari.
And then the 5, 6, 7 is obviously something to pay attention to. I think that'll be interesting. 100%. You got young
I
drivers.
think Red Bull's going to be really bad in Vegas. That track is super bumpy, and that car is really struggling on uneven surfaces, and I don't see that going super well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, stoked for Vegas. Before we get out of here, you guys want to hear a little NASCAR update?
Yeah, dude.
Joey Logano.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. We got to talk about Martinsville first. So F1 or the F1 NASCAR Championship was this past weekend in Phoenix. The real drama of NASCAR happened the weekend before in Martinsville. And just a quick love letter to Martinsville. Martinsville is everything that is right about NASCAR racing. The short track, the bump, the getting into somebody's bumper and moving them up the racetrack. It's beautiful. Martinsville is super cool. It's really unique too. It's a short oval. I think it's a half mile, but one of the corners is uphill and the other corner is downhill. So the braking zones are really, really different. It's really technical for the drivers every single time. It requires them to be super locked in. Anyways, so about 50 laps left in the race. The way NASCAR playoffs work, they have eight people that make, or 12 people that make the playoff races, and then they kind of whittle away from there. Going in, they have 6 races. Going into the last race in Martinsville determines the last 4 people left in the championship. So 30, 40, 50 laps in the race. I'm going to fuck this up because I don't remember exactly what it was, but 2 of the guys that were on the bubble for the points were right in contention. So Christopher Bell, who drives a Toyota, the number 20, usually has DeWalt on his car, and then William Byron, number 24, Chevrolet. So Christopher Bell's in front, about 50 laps left. He has older tires. Byron's behind him. Bell pits for, opposite way around. Let's try this again. William Byron is in front. Christopher Bell is behind him. He has older tires. He pits with about 30 or 40 laps left. As soon as he pits, 5 or 6 laps later, there's a caution. So Christopher Bell, who's in front, he's in the lead, ends up pitting, gets fresher tires to the last lap of the race. So by the time the caution goes off, there's about 20 laps left. So Bell's tires are like 15 laps newer than Byron's. Byron's in front. He's clearly struggling. Bell is consistently putting in fastest laps of the race. Towards the end of the race, there are 2 cars that are seemingly not trying very hard to win. And that is going to be Ross Chastain and Austin Dillon, who are both Chevrolet drivers. So you have a struggling William Byron in front. You have 2 Chevrolet drivers behind William Byron who at a 2-lap track or a 2-lane track are going very slowly for the position that they're in. So anyways, William, the only way that Christopher Bell is able to, because he's not able to get by those guys, there's one other car in the mix. That's the number 23 Toyota of Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace's tires are falling off the planet. And so at the end of the race, very last lap, Christopher Bell pulls a pretty crazy move. He comes in hot on the last corner. He doesn't look like he's catching him, but finally does. Comes in super hot on the last corner. And if you guys remember from last year, Ross Chastain did that thing at Martinsville where he ripped around the wall. Well, I really like Christopher Bell. He's one of my favorite drivers. He's super diverse. The move was questionable. I don't think that the intent was to drive the wall, and I think on the replays you see him steering to come off the wall. But he sent it so deep into the corner that he got on the wall, and the only way to come off was to floor it and to turn left. And he was turning left, but the car was stuck to the wall. So it was super weird after. Like, nobody really knew who won because they put a rule in place after Chastain last year.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that. So it was really weird. Like, I was watching this live. They had a camera on after the race, just like a picture of these guys with their arms crossed, leaning against their car, waiting for NASCAR to come out and say what happened. Ends up that they deemed Christopher Bell's move illegal, and Byron gets in the playoffs. So after the race, this is really long, I know. This is really crazy.
No, it's great.
After the race, they were doing radio reviews. So team radio, just like in F1, is public. Public in terms of the teams. So the teams can go through it. In NASCAR, I think it's actually public. So you can go listen to it, unlike F1.
Yes, you can in F1. F1 TV.
Whatever, with the semantics. So anyway, NASCAR is public, and on the team radio, you hear Austin Dillon, who's already been caught this year talking about wrecking somebody on the final lap of a race, asking his crew chief if the number one knows the deal. So that's Ross Chastain, who is the other car that is holding him up. So just like in F1, there is an incentive for manufacturers to win the championship versus other manufacturers. So Christopher Bell, nothing has been done about that yet, but Christopher Bell is out of the playoffs because these two drivers from a different team put up a blockade, and he had to try to do a crazy move. So Wild getting into the playoffs ended up being kind of a bust. Phoenix stinks. It's not a fun track. Joey Logano ended up winning, and it was a good drive. I watched most of the race.
There some drama, a little bit of drama earlier, though, because of like a DQ. He was knocked out, and then there was an after-race DQ in one of the playoff races that allowed him to continue on, and then he ends up winning it all.
I feel like I remember that, but NASCAR playoffs are really weird. Like I still only like NASCAR championship doesn't mean anything. I watch NASCAR for tracks. Like I'm gonna watch Bristol, I'm gonna watch Watkins Glen, I'm gonna watch Martinsville, all the kind of like really good NASCAR tracks I still watch for sure.
It's kind of sad though. I feel like there's something amiss there. Like
totally,
like there is a lot of excitement in F1 around the drivers specifically. Obviously, constructors is still watched and adds a layer of fun, but when you talk about the lore of F1, it's about the drivers' champions, and like there is that when you talk about the past champions, but you're saying like as a fan, it's not that enjoyable to watch. That's kind of sad, right? That just feels like a miss on their end.
It's fun. We were talking about this before the pod started about how NASCAR is like kind of struggling right now, and I don't know the financials. I need to dig into that, Nick. I'm glad you said something, but something that sticks out to me is like Joey Logano just won his third championship, right? So like Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip, like puts him up there with some like really really awesome NASCAR names, but like it's just the personality. Like I don't know if you guys have watched NASCAR driver interviews lately, but they're not very good, and NASCAR drivers are not very relatable.
Yeah,
they're not nice or relatable. Like they're not cool. They're not like oh dude, I'd love to be this guy, like a moonshiner, like they fucking used to be. And they're not like interesting people. They're just like weird rich rednecks that live in this little bubble. So it's hard to like.
It's funny how Joey Logano doesn't really fit into entirely as well. He's like he feels like. I don't know. He kind of feels like the nerdy, like outsider to a point that no one really likes.
Well, a lot of them are like that, dude. That's what I'm saying. Like, think about a NASCAR driver. Like, you grow up, you're a weird kid in school because your parents pay for you to go racing. Like, you're probably not very like socially good. And then you get all this money and you live in North Carolina and you hear all these people around you telling you what to be. Like, dude, it's pretty. Like, I feel like Logano, Blaney, Denny Hamlin, like they're all just kind of like strange birds in their own
same
variety.
Weird southern human. No.
Yeah, it's like rich southern human that hasn't really known anything else other than this. And it's
like
just not
wealthy but not unwilling to show up to a country club. Kind of like where like it's like F1 is like wealthy and they're on a yacht and with a like a Richard Mille on their wrist model. And a Ferrari and a model. It's like these guys, it's like dirt track in the back of their like mudden vehicle and all that stuff. Yeah, no, I'm with you there.
It's not the racing either, because NASCAR racing, like this year was an awesome year for NASCAR, and like the championship was good. Xfinity was dope. Like their second series, and the cars are fantastic. It's just like they have two problems.
I think the next gen cars get a thumbs up from me, right? Like there was a lot of talk about the next gen cars. Like I just think they worked. Like the idea was to make the racing better, but there was some pushback from the drivers at the beginning of the year because they were new and different and a little bit weird. But I think it's paid off. Which hopefully that's going to be F1 2026 when they make this car smaller and we can get some better racing.
Yeah. Other news, Denny Hamlin and FedEx, after like 20 years, are splitting up. FedEx will no longer be a motorsports, specifically NASCAR sponsor. So right there, take a look. No longer a thing. They've slowly been backing off how many title sponsors or full car sponsors they've been each race, and then finally they made the statement. The other big thing swirling around is, maybe I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, Trav, but like the whole Larson versus Max Verstappen and who is the better driver. What's that?
So, all right.
I have thoughts on that.
You are gonna, I think, have a different thought than me. All right, so I think that it is much harder for Max to go hop in an oval car and have the same level of skill and nuance. Like, it's so much different than road racing. But I think that conversely, if you threw Larson in an F1 car, like, he'd be so in over his head from a technical perspective and all the things that you do, there's no way he'd be able to compete on a race. I'd be really interested to see put them in like a neutral ground. It obviously has to be a road track that they both know well, but I think Max has the slight advantage in my mind. Like Larson's a good driver, but I still think Max has the advantage because oval racing is too unique. So it's going to have to be a road race. Max has got that in my mind, and I know there's a lot. I've seen a lot of clips online.
Nice debacle. It's Ricky Bobby versus Sasha Baron Cohen. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just different, man. Like I genuinely think that Kyle Larson is as good as it gets from a driver perspective. Like I think if you put Max Verstappen at the Chili Bowl with Kyle Larson, he absolutely beats the fucking brakes off of it. But like I agree with your point. But I think that like. Get that? It'd be hard to test it, but like, I think this. I've been thinking about this in my like late night ideas when I'm thinking about racing just by myself, like a weirdo. I would love to do like a pick the best drivers, like SVG, Kyle Larson, Max Verstappen, guys like that, and get them
super
in
series.
Like a different like a spec series or like different like a world tour of events.
I was gonna say, do like a grand tour of driving. That would be sick. That would be put them in rally cars, put them in oval track cars, put them in open wheel cars. That would be.
Have we talked about this on the pod before? Like the Indy 500, the Chili Bowl, Monaco, like all the like not just like not like we're talking like the great races and of all sorts.
Oh man, the super race of super races. That'd be wild. That's like sounds like the XFL dream. It's like, we're gonna let them, everyone's gonna do steroids and we don't have rules. Like, I'm in on that, and then it never gets off the ground.
Give them guns and like make it like Death Race.
It's Death Race with the best drivers. No, man. I honestly don't know enough about Kyle Larson to even add a whole lot to the topic. I just think like everyone knows F1's the pinnacle of motorsports. Is it the pinnacle because the technology? Is it the pinnacle because the drivers? I think it'd be interesting to see like the money differential. Like if I'm a driver, why am I not in F1? Why am I in an IndyCar? Why am I in NASCAR? Why am I in something else other than, and maybe it's a skill set thing, but like, do you go play in the CFL or do you go play in the NFL? It's like, well, I don't care how much you like Canada. Like if you want to go cash a check, you're going to go play in the NFL.
I think the cream rises to the crop. The cream rises to the top at some point with no matter what individual's flavor of motorsport. I think that it is very, very unique to be very good in tons of different types of motorsport. And that's why like I think Max and all the stuff that he does online with racing probably has a big advantage there because he's done a lot of that racing in other cars, but he's not done it in real life. And I don't think there's anybody really that's done it a lot in real life that's raced in F1 and also raced in NASCAR and all, you know what I mean? Fernando Alonso is probably the most experienced human on this planet right now in terms of across the top tiers of motorsport. It's Fernando Alonso if you really think about it.
I think there's a strong argument to be made for Kyle Larson there. I'm not joking. Like I understand what you mean about the top tiers of motorsport, but like that differs from place to place, and like Kyle Larson is legitimately a dirt track menace. Like he shows up to crazy events and like to run shit, and he qualified the first time he ever hopped in an Indy car. He qualified 6th for the fucking Indy 500. Like that's I think there's some like I think he has a legitimate claim to the most traveled driver in the world. I really do, and I know it's mostly in America, but the dude can drive.
Yeah, well. Who knows? Maybe we can hold our breath and do that.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm an hour and 13 minutes in. And you got me on my Kyle Larson.
No, listen. Take it for a rip. I will say, if I do get a vote in American F1, if we pick up another race or we can rename any race, can we please take a NASCAR naming convention and do like the Chili Bowl or like the Austin Bush's Beans Grand Prix or something just so that the European mind just can't understand what we're on about? That's what I need.
This is the Bald Eagle F1 race brought to you by the AR-15. So it's just something absolutely as American as it gets.
Grand Prix presented by Bank Card.
Oh man, yeah.
It's a slippery slope. We can stop that one there.
Hey, one more thing. I know we've been on too long. Did you guys know that there's a baseball game happening in the Bristol the racetrack next year?
No, who's playing? College?
Reds and Braves.
Wow, sick. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
that'd be really sweet.
Absolutely.
That'd be a sweet.
Is it going to be like the Field of Dreams?
I really think that they should have a race going during the game. I don't know why they wouldn't.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Like plus, you don't even need umpires anymore. Everything's electronic. Just get the lights. You got the call signs on the arm these days. But, anyways, boys, that was a lot to cover, lot missed, lot to cover. But always good seeing you.
Yeah, sounds good. Stoked for Vegas. Big time.
Yeah, Vegas will be sweet. Hopefully, we got all the manhole covers securely fastened in the ground with their seat belts, hands and arms inside the vehicle. But no, I think it'd be a ripper of a race. Maybe the one I want to go to next. I don't know. Maybe the one I want to go to next. So, all right, boys. Well, that's another episode of the Outlap.
Thanks for joining us.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
All right, that was fun. That was a good one.